motorway service stations.
That's easy. T-Bay services on the M6, but you don't get to go to it very often.
Let us know why.
Because it's like the best. Everyone knows it's the best.
Why don't you get to go to it too often? Is it because it's too close?
No, yeah, because you'd have to be going to Scotland, basically. Because even the Lakes is too soon for it, so you don't get to go to it very often. Unless you're going a very circuitous way to Newcastle.
What does it have in its favour? Hello, it is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo. I'm your host, Beth Lindop, in the absence of Mr. Joe Rimmer. Hi, Joe, if you're watching. And I am joined by the best strike partnership since Luis Suarez and Daniel Sturridge, Paul Gorst and Ian Doyle. How are we both, Gorsty? You okay?
I will absolutely take that comparison. Don't know which one I am, Suarez or...
Definitely
Sturridge.
Suarez.
You're always injury prone, so I'll have to be Suarez.
Yeah, that is true.
By default.
And you're a fiery...
fiery Uruguayan, yeah.
Controversial antics.
And biting people,
yeah. Good, yeah. Back from... Where have we just been?
Palace it was.
Crystal Palace on Saturday lunchtime, yes.
That's how much you enjoyed it.
Yeah. No, good 3 points. And Liverpool are top for the international break, which we will, as ever, endeavour to struggle through, I guess.
Yeah, Doyle, I believe you considered going to Box Park in Croydon, decided against it.
Yeah, that's true. Me and Theo chanced upon it last time because last season Paul didn't tend to go to any games outside of Merseyside for some reason. Well, certainly not in London. But no, Paul declined. He went, nah, don't fancy that. So he's getting get on a bit now. So we went for Nando's and Wetherspoons instead. Staples.
Very British evening, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think
to be fair, it was busy.
idea.
It was busy. I'll tell you what, we got a pint for less than £5 in London at the Wetherspoons. So I can see why it's popular.
Absolutely. Well, Liverpool pick up another win. They go into the international break. Top of the table, 1-0 victory over Crystal Palace. Not quite at the top of the game, but you know who is at the top of the game? NordVPN. Our lovely sponsors.
Seamless.
To get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/bloodred. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee, and the link is in the podcast episode description box. Palace then, Gorsty, another win, another clean sheet, 9 wins out of 10 now for Arne Slot. How did you see that one on Saturday?
Yeah, I think I said on Friday's pod that it's a very different Liverpool now in that the lows aren't probably going to be quite as low this season, but the highs aren't going to be quite as high either, and it's probably no bad thing really. It's just a continuation of what we've seen over the last few weeks, certainly at least, where Liverpool do enough going forward. They're defensively very solid. I think we can say that now, can't we? You know, they look really strong actually at the back with the 2 in front of the back 4, and the first choice for the majority. We're going to get onto the Allison injury, of course, aren't we? But he's played the majority of games behind the back 4 of Konate, Van Dijk, Robertson and Trent. And that continuity has just bred confidence, and they don't really look like conceding, do they? I can't really think of too many chances they've given away. I think Eze might have had one in the second half, which Jaros, was comfortable enough for him. But yeah, look, defensively they look very strong. On the flip side, they have sort of compromised a little bit of attacking verve, and they don't look like they're going to create too many opportunities. But when they do, they've got players like Diogo Jota who can stick them away. And he probably could have had a hat-trick on the day, but I thought he took his goal really well. A great ball inside from Tsimikas to Gakpo, who sets up Jota, and there's 3 of Slot's 4 changes, making a big contribution there inside 10 minutes for the winning goal. And it was always going to be a difficult game, a winnable one, but it was always going to be tough. And, that is exactly how it turned out to be. So Liverpool increased their lead and they stayed there for the international break. And I think we're starting to see how this Liverpool are shaping up. It's all the same themes are there most weeks.
Yeah, I mean, Gorsty mentioned earlier that there weren't a hatful of chances on Saturday, but defensively they looked a lot tighter. That's maybe been a theme of the season so far. Do you think it might take a little bit of time to strike that balance between being solid defensively, but also making sure you've got plenty of chances as well.
How many chances do you reckon you could get into a hat?
Depends how big the hat is, doesn't it, really?
Well, you asked the question, so how many are we talking?
I mean, we are live, so if anyone is watching along and knows the answer to that, feel free to put it in the comments. But
well, I mean, they have scored 23, sorry. Is it 22? 23, isn't it, in 10 games? So
yeah, they got 5 against West Ham, didn't they?
So they're not scoring as such. I think the interesting thing is that was only the 3rd goal at an actual number 9 score for Liverpool this season. We were talking about it on Friday, and
I'll put an asterisk next to that stat though.
No,
because I'm not having a Jota was this sort of number 10 when he scored against West Ham.
But Nunes was definitely playing, and there's no way he wasn't playing at number 9. Let's be honest. So I'm sticking to that one. In fact, the manager said it. The head coach said it. So you odds with Slot already.
Yeah, I will bring that up with him next time I see him.
I'll give you £1 if you actually do that.
Yeah. Was Diogo really playing as a number 10?
Anyway.
If I said it was Jota playing as a number 10, he'd probably say no, wouldn't he?
Yeah, he likes to... He's very much of his own mind. It's almost like it's a Dutch trait, which I'm sure we're going to mention 1 or 2 times throughout this season, and we already have already. Yes, but going back to the question, Liverpool did, to be fair, Jota had 2 really good chances. He should have scored. The one he scored was the hardest one of the 3 he had.
Yeah.
And they had a few chances on the break in the second half, or what you'd call nearly chances, certainly were, I think it was Diaz and Gakpo were both kind of in very good positions, or vice versa. They didn't quite get the right pass. So they could have done a bit more. It's only the 3 goals scored by a striker. And as I was saying before, Slot said in Friday's press conference that we're not creating enough for them. So within 9 minutes for them to create a goal, not on a plate, but certainly an inviting opportunity, which Jota's put away. So from that point of view, fine. I mean, if you actually look at it from Liverpool's start of the season, I know I read somewhere that some people saying Liverpool being too carried away, and it's like, well, the players certainly aren't. Because if you ask them and the manager, the head coach, sorry, they keep on saying, look, it's a good start, but Slot's very, as we've said a few times already, that he's saying we haven't played anyone yet, is basically what he said. And it's right. And if you actually look at Liverpool's results comparatively from the same games last season, they're actually 1 point worse off, because they beat Forest at home last season and drew at United. And obviously this time they won at United and drew Forest. And the other game in that would have been playing the championship winners from the previous season, who were Burnley, and they won 2-0. So from that point of view, it's what we would have expected. And in terms of the goals conceded, I think they've only conceded 1 or 2 fewer in those games this season compared to last season. And I haven't had a chance to have a look at how many they scored, but I would imagine it wouldn't be too dissimilar. So it's kind of what you would expect. But obviously, the 2 big changes really is that Liverpool are playing a more steadier style of football, which is helping them see through games. I mean, the fact that they went through, if you had an injury time, it was basically 90 minutes being 1-0 ahead and got the job done, having lost the goalkeeper as well towards the end, which we'll get onto in a bit, to do that. And the second thing is obviously the change in midfield, where you got Gravenberch, who again was probably not the best player on the day, but still was more than enough to help Liverpool dominate a midfield that you had Adam Wharton was playing for Crystal Palace, who I think will end up being a really good player, but when Zubimendi didn't sign, there were some fans who were saying sign Wharton, but we saw from the performance on Saturday and the games that have already been played that right now Gravenberch is the player that Liverpool are probably right to invest the time and effort into playing in that defensive midfield role. Maybe further down the line there could be somebody like Wharton coming in, but we're talking if he can get a few more years under his belt and say how he does, fair enough. But right now the decision to play Gravenberch keeps paying off, because again it's a different kind of test, isn't it? He comes up against, I wouldn't say it was a robust midfield. Well, it was a bit robust when Will Hughes came on and started going around kicking players, which, to be fair, Palace should have really done that. If you're looking from Palace's point of view, they were a bit too respectful in the first half.
But hence why Liverpool didn't get a free kick until
exactly. Which is again, but he's come through it. But we know for a fact that it's the next 4 Premier League games at least that will perhaps show us just how good Liverpool actually are.
Yeah.
Just to chime in on that, I mean, I know Slot says that they haven't really played anyone yet, but at the risk of sounding similarly cliched, I think there aren't any easy games anymore in the Premier League. Wolves, bottom of the league, but still going to Molineux is a really tough place to go. Liverpool went there and squeezed past them. Palace is always one of the toughest away games of the season. Old Trafford, Liverpool's record there has been, discussed quite a lot, hasn't it? You know, certainly last season when they went there twice and didn't win, despite dominating both games. So they've won all 4 away games so far. Ipswich was always going to be a difficult one. First game of the season, their crowd are going to be right up for it. So this idea that they haven't played anyone, I don't necessarily agree with. I think Liverpool have done really well.
Just twice now you've disagreed with Slot. I'll tell you what, you're going to take him on this next time you see it.
Yeah. We're big fans. I think that is a really important point. I think Slot said himself, didn't he, in his press conference on Friday, that 10 of the 19 away games Liverpool played last season didn't end in a win. They only won 9. They've won 4 already. So really impressive on the road. And I think away games in the Premier League this season, away wins rather in the Premier League this season, have been quite difficult to come by. Liverpool the only team to win away from home at the weekend. So that is really impressive. Yeah. And I've seen a few things from a few different people, cough cough, Gary Neville, sort of comparing Liverpool's title chances with Arsenal and Manchester City. And of course it's too early really to say, you know, who's going to be in the fight right at the end. But, you know, that he was very much saying that the other week that Liverpool didn't look like a team who could be challenging for the title. And I've seen a few things along those lines on social media, and I sort of think there's sometimes you look back at certain periods in football and with the rose-tinted glasses a little bit. And so I had a little look earlier on at the season that Liverpool went on.
This is proper research, this. Go on, continue. I know.
Yeah. Good at my job, aren't I? Yeah. When Liverpool went on to win the league, they beat Southampton 2-1 away from home. Sheffield United 1-0 away from home. Aston Villa 2-1 away from home. Crystal Palace 2-1 away from home. Wolves 2-1 away from home. In all of those games, you know, as dominant as Liverpool were that season, actually in the 90 minutes they were often very, very tight games, and it is that ability to grind out wins that shapes champions.
Certainly that season, I think Firmino scored the winner in most of them games from what I can remember from memory. Wijnaldum with the winner against Sheffield United. The away thing's interesting because Slot sort of went into real detail about it on Friday in our sort of separate bit that we get with the Nationals, and he basically made a point of saying, you know, City got 10 more points last season in away games and they won the league by 9, so that is a real area for improvement. Almost sort of that is what we can immediately focus on and improve. So 100% record so far from what I've difficult away days, aren't they? Certainly United away, on the toughest you'd imagine that Liverpool will theoretically encounter all season. It bodes well, really, and I think I made this point recently as well, that it bodes well for the derby, because I think Liverpool at times, going to Goodison Park, certainly last season, but in recent seasons, apart from 2021, was it, when they went there and won 4-1, I think Liverpool have been a little bit inhibited going there as well. So the early signs are that the away form will be really strong, and you know, you take home form as a given, don't you? But obviously they've already been beaten by Nottingham Forest, but generally they're really strong at home. So if they can get a few more points on the road, then you know, that'll only put them in good stead if they are looking to really challenge this season.
Yeah, the real blemish from Saturday, and I'll stick with you with this, Gorsty, is that injury to Alisson Becker. You did a little bit of an injury update this morning. Just tell us what the latest is on that. Yeah,
I mean, Liverpool are still sort of waiting the results of the scan. He didn't look in too good a shape, actually, as he walked past us at Selhurst Park. Someone asked him how he was. I think he sort of tried to pretend he was on the phone, so he didn't have to politely decline requests for an interview, and then he gave a little bit of a half-hearted thumbs up. But in the Selhurst Park sort of exit, you've got to walk up steps to go sort of back down to where the team coach was, and he really struggled getting up the steps. He was doing it on one leg, essentially. Really looked like he was suffering with that right hamstring. The worry for Liverpool now is how long he's going to be out for, because he's going to miss Chelsea, you know, on the other side of the break. That is almost certain. The worry is how many more games he misses. Luckily, they've got Kelleher to step in, who talk about loads, haven't we, about being a really good backup. But sadly, it looks like Allison will miss some really big games. And the injury history is starting to become a real concern now, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose that is the biggest worry, Doyley. It's not just sort of in the immediate future that you're concerned about him. It's the third hamstring injury he's had in 2024, which for a goalkeeper is pretty concerning. How worried are you about Allison going forward and his injury record?
I mean, first thing, I struggle up the stairs these days, so that's not quite a sign of an injury. But yeah, he from what you showed me, he didn't
point
look
out that Allison
moving.
is significantly younger than you.
He's not significantly younger, is he? He was 32 the other day. He shared a birthday with somebody, didn't he?
Yes, me and Allison shared the same birthday with Roberto Firmino.
Yeah. Yes, but the Alisson thing, the injuries. I think he's kind of. It's not just him as well. There's other goalkeepers are picking up more injuries, which is why number 2 goalkeepers are becoming more important.
Yeah.
And it's partly because goalkeepers are asked to do a lot more actual playing of football these days. I think all of Alisson's injuries have come from when he's been kicking the ball. For example, I think he did a shoulder once in training. I think when he missed the Aston Villa game where they got beat 7-2, he did was it his thigh? Or his calf against Norwich back in 2019.
Yeah.
And the rest of them have been hamstringed, So it's all come from that side of the game. Obviously, Kelleher missed out because of illness, which meant that you had Jaros come on. And I saw a fair bit of him when he was playing for the academy teams. And you saw him in the summer, didn't you, when he went away to America?
Yeah.
And but it's weird because he looks like a goalkeeper, if that makes sense. He doesn't look like a young goalkeeper. He just looks like a goalkeeper. And he learnt a lot from having that. He wasn't like somebody who was just thrown in at the deep end. But he played 5 or 6 months at Sturm Graz and won the league and cup. And then he got a Czechia international. So there is that, but Kelleher, we've already seen this season that he can come in and do a job. He did it last season, so there won't be too many concerns there. The only concern, as you say, is about Alisson's long-term injury problems. So it's just as well that Liverpool have signed a goalkeeper next season.
It's something that he's been dealing with for a while, Alisson, because I think he maybe felt it before the AC Milan game, decided that he could play through the pain barrier in that one. Then he gets the injury. We find out about the injury, I think it was later that week, wasn't it? And then he misses Bournemouth, he misses West Ham in the Cup, which, he might not have played anyway. So I don't really think like those are two separate injuries. I think this has been one that he's just been sort of battling through, and then finally he's come a cropper at Palace. You
could see from his reaction, couldn't you? You could tell that when he was beating the turf, he was like, "Oh no, it's finally happened," or maybe I shouldn't have played this game. And we don't know what was going on in his head, but it's probably one of those two things.
You could definitely see his frustration, couldn't you? It was almost like, "Oh, not another one." Hopefully not too serious, but as you say, you imagine it will keep him out for a good few games. I think the one positive is now when Kelleher comes in, I don't feel that trepidation. I this might come back to bite us. This might get clipped up in a few weeks' time if Kelleher doesn't do particularly well. But he's on evidence that we've seen so far. He's not really done Liverpool. He's not made a mistake, has he? Really?
Have we had any comments, by the way?
We've had a comment from a Mr. Joe Rimmer.
Yeah.
Who said, "Hi everyone."
That's nice of him.
Is that it?
Hi, Joe.
Is that it?
Get back to work, Joe.
Yeah. Anyway, go on.
But you mentioned them signing. Let me try and pronounce this correctly. Georgi Mamardashvili. Was that a correct pronunciation?
Near enough.
Yeah, close enough.
When you consider sort of the flack that Liverpool have come under lately in terms of contracts, and we'll get onto that a little bit further down the line, it seems like a really shrewd bit of business, this. And when you consider Alisson's injury record, to have someone who is viewed and rated pretty highly within European football, it's clever from the club, isn't it?
Yeah, when I come out in the summer, I think everyone was a little bit of a head scratcher. What does this mean for Alisson? What does it mean for Kelleher? And almost, well, if it means nothing and the club are continuing on with Alisson as first choice, then you start to question, well, what's the thinking here? Because, in isolation, it makes a lot of sense, bringing in a young goalkeeper for the future, sort of safeguarding that department for the next, 5, 6, 7 years, whatever it may be. But, sort of in context of what was happening or what wasn't happening at the time, you sort of questioned it because Liverpool were after a defensive midfielder, weren't they? There were contracts issues that are still sort of on the agenda. So you wondered why Liverpool decided to go for a goalkeeper that wouldn't be arriving for another 12 months when they had a player they considered the best in the world in Allison, and then one of the best deputies around in Kelleher. But I think this injury just kind of shows you that the reason for that move is that Allison is suffering more and more of these injuries, and in the same way you've got gifted outfielders who struggle with injuries in the way sort of Daniel Sturridge might have in his Liverpool career. Alisson's probably in the similar bracket now, isn't he, with the amount of games he's missed? I think he's now missed 42 games since the start of the 2019-20 season, with different injuries and whatnot, and that is by far the most of any Premier League goalkeeper in that timescale. So, yeah, it's becoming more and more of a concern for Liverpool, and that is why they basically didn't entertain any derisory offers for Kelleher in the summer, because they knew at some stage he will be needed, and that decision has been vindicated probably a little bit earlier than they might have wished, but it has been vindicated, and it will be when Kelleher, I'm sure, comes in and plays well.
Yeah, and Allison not the only player to pick up an injury on Saturday. A little bit of a knock for Alexis McAllister. What can you tell us about him?
Yeah, I mean, he got a bit of a groin issue, didn't he? I think Slot said after the game. But then he posted on Instagram, didn't he? Me and Doyle were on the train back when we seen it. He said something like, I'm not concerned or something, did he? Basically, didn't sound
carrying on.
It didn't sound as though it was too serious. And then he's flown to Miami to meet up with a few other European-based Argentina internationals, and he's meeting up with Argentina reporting for duty and will be checked over before they play Venezuela on Thursday. So, it seems like he's okay, but hopefully he doesn't play too much with the international break.
Yeah, fingers crossed anyway. Talking about a few individual performances then, we touched on Jota earlier on, Doyley, but it was very much that goal is the sort of goal that only Diogo Jota you can imagine scoring out of Liverpool's front line. Just that willingness, that eagerness to get in front of the defender, and a real poacher's kind of goal. He's so important, isn't he, to what Liverpool want to do and the way that they want to play under Slot.
Well, the Palace manager, Oliver Glasner, that is, I remembered his name now, he mentioned after the game, and he said, when you've got someone like a player like Jota with his, I actually just called him Diogo actually, which I thought was quite unusual. He's obviously big mates with him. Basically said that when he's got that kind of movement, he's very difficult to defend. I mean, he got in front of Trevor Chalobah, who was making his debut for Palace, and it was very early in the game. So I think all those things help. But yeah, you can't really see Núñez scoring that goal, can you? But then I can't see Jota scoring the goal that Núñez scores against Bournemouth. So it is one of them, the different things that they bring to the team. But on Friday we were talking that, Ghosty wants to get a new number 10 and a new number 9. And I think that it is imperative that Liverpool, as I said before, Slot said it on Friday, that they do find a way of getting these forwards into the games and getting chances, because they will score, because Núñez still scored. Was it last season 18, was it? Last season 15 in the first season?
15 first season, I can't remember, it was 17 or 18 last season.
It's still a fair amount for a striker, especially in a team that you had 4 different players. Was it 4 or 5 ended up getting 10 goals? Yeah, so they are spreading them out, and that's still a lot. I mean, in terms of Jota, the thing with Jota is he going to be fit? We've said this so many times. He's another player who, when he gets injured, he tends to be out for quite a while. He's been a bit unlucky with certain things, but I think that's partly because of the way he plays. He throws himself about, gets stuck in, loves to go rush around and press, and if you get involved in the physical confrontation, you are going to get the kind of injuries that he gets, whether it's a hamstring, whether it's a groin, or in his case a knee, wasn't it, that he got that was quite bad. So, I think with Jota, just a matter of keeping him fit, and Liverpool have done that pretty well actually throughout this. We spoke about the rotation quite a few times now. They didn't really want to do it. I think McAllister's injury, mine injury, is just a sign of that. I wonder whether Allison, that can't really be rotation because he's a goalkeeper. I think that's going back to the other thing. And other than that, which other players have been injured? Elliott's was a fractured foot, which has got nothing to do with fatigue or anything like that. Curtis, and that's been about it. So they've done well so far, but the big tests in many ways are to come over the next 7 games, which I think are over a period of 21 days. The last 7 were over 22.
We've got a comment from Natalie Laurent. She says, Hello, Natalie. 3 things I'd like Liverpool to improve on. Their away form in London. They won less than half the points available there last year. I mean, good start on Saturday, I suppose. Turn draws into wins. They haven't drawn a game yet, have they? So
no, they managed to turn a draw into a defeat.
Yeah, they have. So fingers crossed. Yeah. And be more clinical in front of goal, which, as we were saying, it would have been nice if Jota might have took that header away in the second half, would have made things a little bit more comfortable. But fingers crossed.
Well, he had that chance in the first half as well, didn't he? When Gravenberch
missed
got
it quite spectacularly.
Yeah, he sliced at it, which is weird because that's the kind of a finish of a person who hasn't scored in about 300 weeks. But not somebody who scored about 50 minutes earlier. Yeah,
at the other end of the pitch then, Virgil van Dijk, totally imperious again. Probably could have been a contender for man of the match in every single game that he's played this season. He's doesn't seem to be, his influence on this team doesn't seem to be waning, Doyley, does it?
No, he seems to have benefited from Slot coming in. Not that there's anything wrong under Klopp or anything like that, but I think a lot of the players have just, Salah himself mentioned it the other week, where he said maybe we got into a comfort zone because Jurgen had been there for that long, and it's no matter how hard you try, it's very, very difficult to get out of it unless something major happens. In this case, it was Klopp going and Slot coming in, so they've had to prove themselves to the new manager. And I think just the way that Liverpool play, Van Dijk spoke after the game the other day, which I've already forgotten about. Who did he play? Bologna. He spoke after that game, and he quite interesting actually. He opened up on how game is having to change in terms of in possession, where he doesn't play as many the searching diagonals out to Salah and whoever's playing on the left, and normally Diaz, but you can still do it, and he did that at the weekend. But there's more passing in between the midfield, in between the lines, into Gravenberg, who can turn, into McAllister, who can look after it, probably a little bit further in for Szoboszlai or Jones, whoever's playing, so they can have a run. So Liverpool have, I think the second goal against Bologna came from that, where Van Dijk played a ball up, and I think it was Jota got it, played it to Szoboszlai, Salah cut in, and it was a goal. So he's saying that he's enjoying it. And we've mentioned so many times that it took him a while. He's had to adjust his game because he's got a bit older and he's a tiny bit slower because of his injury that he got against Everton, which is now 3 years ago now, almost, which seems astonishing. But I think he's playing his best form at the moment since that injury, which probably now
4 years ago, is it not?
4 years ago, was it? 4 years ago, isn't it? Yeah. There you go.
Time flies,
it does. I'll have to change my stuff now.
See, it's a good job I'm here, isn't it?
To be able to count, yes. When you get to my age, you just lose count.
You can't count, can't walk up the stairs. It's all downhill after 50.
But we put it with you though, so. Sorry.
Lost my train of thought now. You can't really talk about Van Dijk at the moment without talking about contracts. Of course, Mr. Doyle there actually wrote a piece a little bit earlier on about contracts.
About Trent, yes.
About Trent. But obviously Van Dijk and Salah, their future's still up in the air. How are you feeling about all of that at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, we've had the news today. I mean, that Terrell Kwanzaa is set to sign a new contract, and talks are open with Ibrahim Konate over a new deal as well. And when I put the story out this morning, there's loads of comments coming in saying, well, what does this mean for Van Dijk and Salah and Trent? And I suppose one thing you would say is they can do more than 2 things at once or 3 things at once. So talks are ongoing with those, but I think it's a just reward for Kwanzaa in particular, who's had a bit of a meteoric rise in the last 12 months since he sort of broke into the team, and he's fully deserving of improved terms that reflect his kind of standing in the squad now as a valued member rather than just a sort of youth player who's been brought up. Konate is probably showing his best form for over 2 years, you'd say. So
again, it's partly because he's free of injury.
Yeah. So, probably good to get him tied down. He's still only 25. I think his best years theoretically are to come. So that makes sense as well. And just at a time when Liverpool are looking really strong defensively, I think it's good to keep that continuity. People at Liverpool think that Kwanzaa's going to be an England international for years to come, and obviously turned down Newcastle's advances, didn't he, over the summer when there was talk of Anthony Gordon. So they rate him incredibly highly, and that will be reflected, I'm sure, in the bottom line of his new deal. But the other 3 are probably special cases, aren't they, to an extent? The 3 of the most high-profile outfield players, 3 of the players who are contributing some of the most, particularly at the moment Van Dijk, who's been brilliant, really, and Salah, of course, the legendary highest paid player at the club. So there are certain factors to take into account with each of those 3 deals. But good news nonetheless on Konate and certainly Kwanzaa's front, and we're expecting perhaps Kwanzaa's deal to be signed, sealed and delivered sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I think it's important, isn't it, Doyley, when you consider the situation Liverpool have found themselves in with those big 3 contracts, that obviously they are the priority. The club are working to get those done. They obviously want that wrapped up as soon as possible in an ideal world. But when you consider the situation that they find themselves in, 3 key players in the final year of the contract, for Liverpool to sort of start planning ahead a little bit more as they used to do, as they were sort of they prided themselves, didn't they, on being one of the best run clubs in the country in European football. For them to start doing that with the likes of Konate and Kwanzaa is important, isn't it?
Well, it's what happens when you have one sporting director comes in as a temporary measure for basically 2 transfer windows. Then the one before that decided he didn't want to do it anymore after a season. So they have had that kind of period of uncertainty. They're not expecting Richard Hughes to go anywhere anytime soon. And obviously with Michael Edwards a bit further up the food chain as the FSG chief executive of football, they've got the structure in place. And now we're starting to see, certainly from an actual public, front-facing view, that things are actually happening. I mean, in terms of the 3 players, they are special cases. They're all different cases as well, aren't they? Let's be honest. I think with Salah, it's the main question is, does he want to go to Saudi Arabia or not? Because he probably will at some point, but is it now? Will Liverpool therefore give him the money that he wants? I suspect it's going to reward it, but not stymie themselves for a player who they know is very much towards the end rather than the beginning. With Van Dijk, a little bit similar. I almost think he's the easiest one to sort because he's the club captain though. And obviously Trent's the main one in the sense that if you were to sell him now and he was under contract, you get an awful lot of money for him, and somebody's probably still got his best year still ahead of him. And there's obviously
26 today.
Yeah, obviously the special. Obviously, there's the special situation for him is that he's a homegrown player and he's come through the ranks, so he's kind of seen as a figurehead not just of the team but also of the academy itself. So you don't really want him going off to European Super League advocates Real Madrid, they will forever be called thus.
Yeah, we've got a comment from Sanjay Mystery on YouTube who says, reports say there's an impasse with Trent, Van Dijk and Salah. Is that your reading?
Well, there is, obviously.
There is. That's why
it's not been sorted,
nothing happening, yeah. I think Mr. Mystery commented on Friday, did he? Long-time listener, so thank you for that. Viewer, listener, yeah, either way. I mean, just by virtue of nothing developing, that it is an impasse.
I saw a lot of people sort of trying to forensically dissect the word impasse on social media last night.
It's a word that no one ever says but we use.
Yeah.
It's like profligate. No one ever says that.
No, I think it's because when you Google it, in fact, should we Google a dictionary definition?
Synonyms for impasse.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I mean, the last update we had from Van Dijk was the Sevilla friendly, I think, which was 2 months ago now. So maybe if we ask him, maybe there's further light to shed on that. We'll find out after the international break. Trent obviously said a couple of weeks ago a few words about his, didn't he?
Yeah, he did, yeah.
Salah famously
doesn't ever say anything.
Said what he said at Old Trafford. But,
he sees you too and he goes, no, thank you, carries on walking.
No, he says hello, and he just gives us he acknowledges that we exist.
Yeah, which is nice of him. The dictionary definition of impasse is a situation in which no progress is possible, especially because of a disagreement. So I think people were sort of reading into that nothing would be sorted with these contracts, but it's obviously used in the context as, like you guys say.
Well, by definition, impasses don't exist forever. Because there is a resolution one way or another. Exactly, yeah.
And also as well, it's a lot easier to resolve a contract situation like Jarell Kwanzaa than it is Mohamed Salah. And I put Konate in that bracket as well. If he's happy and settled, he's in form, he's probably enjoying his football a lot more than he has for a while. I'd probably suggest at the moment as he's playing every week. So you can see why progress on those deals might be easier to come by than the 3 top earners, or 3 of the top earners.
Yeah, we've just had a comment from Sideline Football Show saying, any news on Allison injury? Sorry, I just started watching. If you rewind Sideline Football Show, you'll hear everything Paul Gorst had to say on that. But essentially, he's having a scan. We'll know more in the coming days, coming weeks, hopefully. Fingers crossed, not as serious as it appeared on Saturday.
Sore one.
It looked a sore one indeed. More broadly, then, I say that as someone with ample experience of hamstring
diagnosis there. Yeah.
When else would you suffer a hamstring injury? You don't really come about too much in normal life, do they?
I don't know if you sit here for long enough. I've done that in the past where I've sat down long enough and I've just gone ow, but it tends to be after having done some kind of strenuous activity. So, which obviously doesn't happen anymore. Yeah. So that's why I've not had one for ages. Yeah.
Just moving swiftly on from that then.
Don't be rude. Anyway, go on.
So 7 Premier League games into the new season, 10 games into the Arne Slot era. We can now sort of pause, reflect a little bit. Gorsty, if you were ranking it out of 10, what would you score Arne Slot's start to life?
Yeah, I mean, Nottingham Forest aside, it's been great, hasn't it? Just come in won every other game, and there is that sort of just lingering defeat at home to Forest. It's just a little frustrating thing, I'm sure, for Slot and certainly supporters. But other than that, great. So should we maybe say 9 out of 10 for the 9 games that he's won?
Yes,
really?
Exactly that.
Fabulous. We've got a question from Mr. Joe Rimmer. Hi, Joe.
We said hi before. We don't have to say hi twice to him.
Well, he's my boss, so I've got to be nice to him.
No, he's not.
He says,
he's not even your boss.
Let's hear your thoughts on the Van Dijk pen incident. Some disagreement on the Echo desk. I wasn't aware there was disagreement.
Oh, there was, yeah.
Yeah, I mean...
I don't think it's a penalty.
I try to avoid talking about decisions as much as possible. If they're huge, major decisions, then you have to, but this one was just a bit of a nothing. They happen 10 a penny. No pen for me.
Doyley, no pen?
The fact that I didn't even remember it during the game itself says as much. And then somebody else pointed out that Liverpool should have a penalty when Klein got hold of Van Dijk, and I don't remember that either, which kind of suggests that neither of them were of any great import.
There seems to be few VAR incidents this season where you're scratching your head. It seems to be happening every week last season. Well, now you barely notice it, which is definitely an improvement.
I feel as though there's one club that might think that they're getting quite a lot against them, but we'll continue.
Brilliant. I'm sure our producer Ian loved that comment.
He did. He's an Evertonian.
On the other side of the international break, Ghosty, it does, as everyone has pointed out on social media and after games and things, it does really get difficult for Liverpool on paper anyway. So the next 7 fixtures, which is Doyley said, are played within the space of 21 games. You've got Chelsea.
21 days.
21
that would be some going.
Sorry. Chelsea, RB Leipzig, Arsenal, Brighton, Liverpool. Oh no, Brighton twice.
That would be a good game.
Leverkusen and Aston Villa, and then we've got another international break. And we've got Southampton, Real Madrid, Manchester City, Newcastle, and Everton. So they've got some real tough games coming up. Are you concerned, or are you excited to see how Liverpool rise to the challenge?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got to be excited because there's nothing untoward that's happening in games that are making you think that Liverpool aren't equipped to take on the challenges. I think Chelsea at Anfield will be a really good indication as to where Liverpool are at the moment, because last season Liverpool absolutely battered Chelsea. It was probably the best performance of the season. I think it was a 4-0, 4-1 in January. So let's see how they get on with that one. Arsenal away is going to be a huge game. You probably, if you're offered me it now, I'd take a point. And then you've got Champions League on the horizon as well, haven't you? Leipzig away. Liverpool made a really good start to their Champions League campaign, 6 points from 6. So, there's not a whole lot to criticise at the moment. Liverpool look a lot more solid. They look a bit less exhilarating going forward. But as time goes on, I think they'll start to implement a bit more of sort of let the shackles off a little bit more, maybe. But so far, you can't really complain. So I suppose you're excited about the challenges that are ahead.
Just to finish off then, I've got a good question here from Sideline Football Show. It says, for Slot, what would be the minimum to rate his first season as a successful season? Mr. Doyle, what do you think, if we're sat here come May, what will Slot need to have achieved for it to have constituted a successful season for you?
I don't know, actually. Probably quarterfinals of the Champions League, finishing the top 4 is what I'd say.
Yeah, maybe. I think Liverpool, Champions League wise, you think they've always got it in them to have a really good run, haven't you? So maybe even one better than that in last 4. Maybe that's asking a bit much, but they at the moment they certainly seem equipped to, you could see them handling a 2-legged tie in the knockout stages. Certainly being a bit more defensively solid away from home, and then look to get teams back at Anfield and all of that sort of European lore and stuff. So maybe I'll go one better than that and say top final 4 of the Champions League, and an improvement on 3rd. Maybe finish as runners up. Maybe challenge City a little bit more than they did last season. But we'll see what happens, because we know that alongside Arsenal and City, there is a sort of big 3 almost developing now in the Premier League.
Yeah.
I think over the next 4 games, if they get 9 or more points, they're definitely in the title race. If they get 6, 7 or 8, they probably are, and if they get 5 or fewer, they're not.
Yeah, I think expectations change, don't they, as well, over the course of the season. If they're still top in February, then we might be talking with a little more conviction.
I think 4 points from the games against Arsenal and Chelsea would be huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, fingers crossed. They might even surprise us. They might get 6, Ghosty. Who knows? We've got a little bit of time now to let our heart rate settle and not worry too much about league position and games and things like that. International break, you looking forward to that one, Doyley?
No.
Right, on that note.
Nord Person of the Week.
Oh, our Nord Person of the Week, of course.
Yes.
Virgil van Dijk.
Between the Bologna game, I'm trying to think.
He played well enough, didn't he?
Virgil, let's give it to Virgil.
Yeah, Virgil wins it again.
There you go. I'm sure he'll be delighted with that one. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for watching, listening, and we'll be back soon with the Blood Red podcast.